Welcome to the Contreras Report International Edition. This is being recorded on January 21st, one day after President Biden was sworn in as the 46th President of the United States of America. In a word, the country survived Donald J. Trump. Survived being the key word. I'll discuss that later, for most of this report is on relations with our next door neighbor, Mexico. Relations between the United States and Mexico have mostly been destroyed by Donald Trump, whose dislike of Mexico and Mexicans was no secret from the moment he announced for president in June 2015. Need anyone be reminded that Trump referred to Mexicans as not the best, quote unquote, as rapists, drug smugglers, and criminals, quote unquote, in the original campaign announcement? Or how about the "Who is going to pay for my beautiful wall?" His crowds would yell, "Mexico." To balance those charges and accusations, he did say, quote, "Some Mexicans were good people," unquote. Some of the 170 million Mexicans in the United States and Mexico, like me, in both countries, I presume he was talking about. Then he ordered tariffs on some Mexican steel and tariffs on Canadian aluminum. When the pandemic infected big numbers in the United States, Trump ordered travel into the United States from Mexico and Canada limited to U.S. citizens, green card holders, and essential workers. Result, no minimization of pandemic numbers, but a devastating blow to American small businesses adjacent to the border. Billions of dollars normally spent by Mexicans in the U.S. border areas of San Diego, Yuma, Tucson, El Paso, Laredo, and Brownsville, Texas, spent on a daily basis, disappeared, along with the thousands of jobs those dollars supported. That travel restriction still exists a year after it was imposed. Trump is gone, but he announced during the campaign for re-election that he would charge everyone crossing the border, like me, an American citizen, a charge for crossing the border. Every car, every truck, and every pedestrian, over 1 million people a day, would pay a crossing charge to pay for his multi-billion-dollar wall that isn't even a wall. It's an already rusting fence. Like tariffs, Americans would pay for Trump's wall by a tax. So much for cutting taxes. More important than the wall, tariffs and border crossings is a huge problem that started with the surprise arrest of Mexico's former Secretary of Defense, retired Mexican Army General Salvador Cienfuegos, at the Los Angeles, California airport on charges that he was involved in drug smuggling from Mexico during the 6 years he was Secretary of Defense, 2012 through 2018. Mexico flipped out. No one in the Mexican government knew there was even an investigation being done by the U.S., despite a treaty requiring notification by the investigating party of anyone being investigated in the other country. The airport arrest was the first anyone in Mexico heard of the investigation. Mexicans from President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador down to Tijuana taxi drivers blew their corks. Donald Trump had to personally approve the arrest, as he had to approve the Justice Department's request to a federal judge that the charges be dropped against General Cienfuegos after Mexico complained. The charges were dropped and the general returned to Mexico a free man. The U.S. agreed to let Mexico investigate the general and turned over hundreds of pages of evidence. The arrest was based on texts and emails intercepted by the United States, none of which mentioned the general by name or rank. One wonders how a massive drug investigation and charges would survive for long in a federal U.S. court that was based on texts and emails that never mentioned the name or the rank of the accused. I think not for long. But to the Trump Department of Justice, Anything was possible. No live witnesses, just texts and emails intercepted by the U.S. government that don't name who the mentioned El Padrino is. For those who don't speak Spanish, El Padrino means the Godfather. Yeah. If this sounds like a cheaply made movie, it might be produced by the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency cowboys, still seeking revenge for the murder of one of their own, Enrique Camarena, a murdered DEA agent, 1985. Remember Michael Flynn? He pled guilty twice to lying about a conversation he had with a Russian apparatchik. Nonetheless, Flynn, a confidant and friend of President Trump, tried to withdraw his guilty pleas, and Trump's Department of Justice actually asked the judge to drop the charges before Flynn was sentenced. He pled guilty twice. The judge involved refused to let Flynn withdraw his guilty pleas and found fault with the Department of Justice request to dismiss the case. Trump stepped in and pardoned Flynn. Back to Mexico. It announced last week that it could find no lawbreaking on the part of General Cienfuegos and declared him innocent. There was no trial. The government also released 700 pages of American investigation documents. Mexican critics shrug off the declaration of innocence and suggest that little, if any, Mexican investigation occurred. But no matter, to investigate a general in the army next or secretly, and to not live up to the very treaty and attitude that has sent numbers, big numbers of high-ranking Mexican narcotics cartel leaders to the U.S. for trial and incarceration, smacks of stupidity. It may be that General Cienfuegos is guilty as hell, but U.S. DEA agents and officials should not have tried to work this case like they did. President Trump should have spent a few minutes talking with the Mexican president about how to advance the case against the general in a way not to embarrass the Mexican government. That is possible. Lopez Obrador had gone out of his way to appease Trump on Central American caravans, on border crossings, and allowing the Americans to send asylum refugees back to Mexico against U.S. policy instead of letting them stay in the U.S. while their cases are being litigated. Trump owed the Mexican president a lot, but Trump didn't do anything. He let the DEA cowboys and the Justice Department totally screw up relations with Mexico. Trump did crumble, though, when Mexico demanded the general back and the evidence used to charge him. Trump caved like the wimp he was. Mexico won this fight, the first fight it put up against Trump 4 years, and now Trump is gone. It's up to President Joseph R. Biden Jr. to fix the relationship with our next-door neighbor. We hope he is better at it than his former boss, Barack Obama. It was, after all, Barack Obama who approved cages for kids and taken immigrant kids away from their families. It was Obama that refused to send immigration reform to Congress, even when Democrats held control of the House and the Senate and the White House. Can Biden deliver? If he listens to people who know what's going on, he can. If he acts like Obama and Trump, the only thing he will help solve is the DACA situation that Trump stupidly tried to end, even as it was supported and is supported by the vast American public, including Republicans. The court stopped that. So now it's up to Joe Biden to bring it back to life. Kids that were brought here as kids are not guilty of illegal entry. Mexicans who come to work in the fields and feed us are not criminals. Neither are the people who build houses, pave roads, and work in restaurants or in hotels making beds. These are people we need. If Americans don't want these jobs, let's bring people who want to do the work. Let's bring them in to do the work. New taxpayers and consumers spending money, that's what they are once they start working legally. Trump has done that exact same thing every year to staff his Florida resort Mar-a-Lago because, he says, there aren't enough Americans that want those jobs. If it's good enough for Trump, it should be good enough for strawberry farmers in California. Let me finish with my column for this week. It was written on Monday, the 18th of January, so it was before the inauguration. Populist Donald J. Trump, adios, by Raul Lowry Contreras. By the time this is published, Donald J. Trump will no longer be president of the United States. The House of Representatives that was Republican when he entered the White House is now a Democrat. The Republican Senate of 2017 is no longer Republican. Besides leaving behind a Democrat White House and Congress, he's leaving a core of followers who have absorbed Trump's total ignorance of the real world and America's place in it. He leaves Washington, D.C. with 25,000 or more armed troops patrolling the streets. He leaves relations with next-door Mexico in tatters because he allowed the Department of Justice, the DOJ, to indict and arrest the former Mexican Secretary of Defense on narcotics trafficking charges. Charges the gutsy Trump DOJ dropped when Mexico objected. He leaves relations with our treaty partners of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, also in tatters, to the point that debate about mutual defense dominates NATO members. Like they won't come to our defense, maybe, if we're attacked. Russia loves it. Tariffs, which previous Republicans Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush used sparingly to help American companies like Harley-Davidson, have been used by Trump not only against competitors like China, but friends like Canada and Mexico, our two largest trading partners. Politically, Trump's Republican Party can best be described as Trump's bitch. Perhaps the worst effect Trump has had on the Republican Party is his welcome support from ultra-righteous groups that include American Nazis, white supremacists, Ku Klux Klanners, anti-Semites, white nationalists, immigrant haters, Mexican haters, free trade haters, and otherwise legitimate evangelicals. Yes, evangelicals. The most dangerous, in my view, are the evangelicals who stood by Trump November 3rd and voted for him like they did in 2016, despite every detail of Trump's personal life and morals on view. Evangelicals normally reject anyone who has the morals, the public morals of Donald Trump. Not this time. The second most dangerous group of Trump supporters are represented by people like Peter Navarro, a Tufts University and Harvard PhD who falsely presents himself in the White House as a trade expert, quote unquote, and pretends that a tariff policy is best for America and its workers, when in fact, tariffs cost Americans their precious dollars and punish Americans. Navarro, who Trump calls, quote, my Peter, unquote, like Trump, refused to serve the United States military in the Vietnam era and escaped the draft by joining the Peace Corps. We can describe the Trump presidency as a hollow presidency highlighted by support from racists, traitors like those who attacked the Congress on January 6th, law-breaking by his cabinet, few, if any, appointed to the cabinet that were qualified to lead government agencies. And of course, there's the pardons of friends who personally undermined the government and committed egregious felonies on their own to protect President Trump. As of this moment, we do not know who the rumored 100 or so pardons Trump is expected to grant the last few hours in power, but we know they will be an unsavory group of crooks, criminals, and traitors like those he already pardoned the former Arizona sheriff, Joe Arpaio, the admitted liar and felon Michael Flynn, personal political gopher liar Roger Stone, and Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, who actively worked with Russian operatives while running Trump's 2016 campaign. Of course, we know that he pardoned Steve Barr, his buddy. We don't know if Biden is smart enough or effective enough to correct the dangerous Trump avenues of paying attention to the lowest American uneducated class that hates those in America who consider the world as ours to protect and defend from people like Trump. They go to Trump rallies to watch Trump pretend he's Benito Mussolini with massive support because people show up to enjoy Trump's blundering through repetitive, ungrammatical, ignorant speeches only high school dropouts can appreciate. If this sounds elitist, so be it. I sacked a lot of groceries to work my way through a university. I'm not alone. Over 80 million people thought like me on November 3rd. That trumps 74 million votes. Elections have consequences, ladies and gentlemen. We found that out in 2016. Elitists read American exceptionalism got us here to where we are. Successful countries and people live free because elitists produced America. At least that is, elitists who believe history and don't attack the Congress looking to lynch the Speaker of the House and the Vice President of the United States. You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Don't forget, for you to be notified when we post new reports, you need to subscribe at YouTube or Facebook. So subscribe. If you want to contact me, the address is coming up, and you can send me an email, and I promise you I will respond no matter what it is you have to say. Ask me a question, make a statement, take a position, that's fine. This is the United States of America, and it is a free country because we can all express our views. And we have a free press. And we have the freedom to vote for whomever we want. And we cannot let that be taken away. Again, thanks for being there. This is the Contreras Report. I'm Raul Lowry Contreras. This is the Contreras Report International Edition. Subscribe to it and you'll be notified whenever we post. Thank you again for being there. We'll talk to you next time.